From the last episode, we're left with a cliffhanger when Aya Rindo enumerates 5 out of the 7 problems she encountered upon analysing the murder of Lady Hannah, the wife of Lord Goddard. But there's no need to rush the truth. In due time, it will reveal itself, as it always does. The Goddard family, together with their detective guests, the coachman and the butler Alfred, takes their meal in the dining hall. The sons, Claude and Raoul, are not yet convinced regarding the capability of Aya and Tsugaru in solving their mother's murder. To them, these so-called detectives look more like conmen who'll double-cross them at any time. To impose their reputation, Aya decides to show them a bit of her deductive reasoning skills by focusing on their coachman, Mark. Just by looking at his clothes and his overall appearance, Aya succinctly concludes that Mark used to be a drunkard. But his wife has berated him to stop his vice. His clothes, despite being worn out, show deliberate care that a wife can only do for her beloved husband. Mark cries after realising his shortcomings, although another good reason can be that a severed head is lecturing him about appreciating his wife more. Claude is impressed by this. He remembers another famous London-based detective going by the name of Sherlock Holmes. Aya knows him as well, but she prefers not to meet him at all. After the meal, Aya proceeds with checking the alibis of the mansion's inhabitants, as well as going over the timeline of events. Going over the details will address both the obvious and the speculative factors of the case. On the day of the incident, the Goddards had their midday lunch at midnight, lasting for about 30 minutes. And then, an hour later, Hannah's body was discovered. Goddard says his wife told him she would be in her room for a nap. After this, he went to the study room to talk with Claude about some business matters. Charlotte was also with them, playing with her dollhouse. After 1 o'clock, the 3 left the study and separated in the hall. The father went to the storage room to prepare for hunting, while the siblings went to their rooms. When Goddard left the mansion to hunt, his youngest son Raoul came to him and asked if he could come with him, which he allowed. Aya then asks Claude for his alibi between 1 o'clock and 1:30 a.m. He says he stayed in his room until the body's discovery. Charlotte was pestering him to sing her a song, so when the maid, Giselle, came after cleaning the kitchen and the dining hall, he let his younger sister go with her. The maid says she was with Charlotte the whole time doing laundry, except for a minute or 2 when she went to the bathroom. As for the butler Alfred, he says he stayed in his office after the meal to deal with paperwork. When Aya asks Raoul for his alibi, the younger son shows irritation at being suspected, but he eventually says he stayed in his room after the meal as well, up until when he went to his father to accompany him for his hunt. Aya also asks Claude and Alfred if they heard any suspicious sounds, to which the 2 say they heard nothing. From the statements, Aya states that the crime may have happened between 1 o'clock to 1:30 a.m. while Goddard was hunting, and only 2 among the family members have no solid alibis within the said time frame, Claude and Alfred. Goddard strongly objects to the implication that a member of his family can do such a horrific deed. But Aya is firm that the culprit is not an outsider, or else nothing about the crime scene will make sense. Their exchange only ends when Charlotte walks out, distressed about her mother's murder. After this rather glum dinner, Aya, Tsugaru and Shizuku walk around the mansion to get to know the interior. The severed head instructs her maid to keep a close eye on the servants, while she and Tsugaru will accompany Goddard in the forest. To Aya, there's still a missing piece to the puzzle. As long as she doesn't have it, she'll be inclined to believe what the murderer intends for them. While they walk along the forest path, Goddard gives in to his curiosity and asks Tsugaru and Aya about the existence of a so-called immortal. Aya confirms this and adds that only an Oni, or a demon in their language, can end their eternity. But it doesn't mean that a demon is impervious to mundane attacks. They can still be fatally wounded by gunshots. Tsugaru kinda confirms that they are the entities Goddard is asking about. The vampire is astonished to realise he's met the creatures he only heard in his childhood stories. But before he can say anything, an arrow hits his neck. Goddard immediately runs after the vampire hunter and pins him on the ground. He's ready to believe this human was the one who finished his wife, but Aya stops him from committing a crime. It turns out the man, whose name is Josef, has travelled all the way from Germany to seek vengeance for his partner. This partner happens to be the same hunter that Goddard apprehended earlier, and the one who owns the silver stake believed to be the murder weapon. Aya reasons that Josef can't be the murderer, simply because he's travelling at the time of the incident, and the proof is his ticket and the soot on his elbow. She turns to the hunter and asks about his partner. Yosef says that he tried to dissuade Hugo, his partner, from his plans of attacking Goddard months before, but Hugo was confident he could pull off what he's prepared for. Using his special stake encased in leather and another reliable accomplice, Hugo was sure that he could make a statement against the so-called human allies. Yosef also adds that he's only here to avenge his partner, but it's clear that he's not exactly against the vampires. Aya asks Yosef again if he knows that the prepared stake was silver, to which he says he has no idea. With that, she lets the hunter go. She now has the final piece of the puzzle in this almost farcical yet tragic event. She orders the vampire to gather everyone in the study room so she can discuss the events of the murder and reveal the true culprit. After a few minutes, everyone involved is present. Aya starts her deduction show. She begins by saying that the culprit is indeed one of the members of the Goddard family. She goes back to the 7 problems she detected after her initial study of the crime scene. First, it's strange that Lady Hannah didn't sense the intruder despite her vampire abilities. Second, it doesn't make sense that the attack happened at night when all the vampires are awake. Third, it's baffling why the bottle of holy water was left at the crime scene. Fourth, the culprit has obvious knowledge of the layout of the mansion and the schedule of its occupants. Fifth, it's strange why the stake was put back into the storage room. And now, she states the 6th problem, one of the most important ones in this case. Claude and Alfred's rooms are near Hannah's room, so they would have heard any sounds coming from it. But they didn't. So why is this so? Several explanations can be made. It could be that there were indeed suspicious sounds coming from the room, and that both Alfred and Claude lied about it, making them accomplices in the crime. But if they're indeed accomplices, then they should have made a strong alibi for each other. Since they don't have any, this angle is a moot point. Of course, it's also possible that either of them got the stake and committed the crime before 1 a.m., but Goddard says that nothing was amiss in the warehouse at the said time. Another explanation could be that a pillow was used to muffle the sound, but the presence of the bloody cloak indicates that the suspect used it to protect himself from the blood splatter. From these considerations, it's safe to assume that the culprit used his bare hand to stab the stake into Hannah's chest. They could have heard hammering or tinkering, which would be normal since the lady used to fix antiques and furniture. But the only reason no sound was heard at the time was that the actual weapon used was not the silver stake, but rather a more fragile but still potent murder weapon. This leads to the 7th and final problem in this case, relating to the bottle left at the crime scene. Everyone has assumed holy water was splashed on Hannah's body, and the bottle was the container used to do it. Yet its inside is dusty, which contradicts this assumption. However, holy water was indeed present on the victim's body. Why is this so? The only explanation is that the culprit used this as a red herring, to hide the true murder weapon. That the stake used to stab Lady Hannah was made of iced holy water. And so the sequence of events is like this. The culprit tricked an avenging vampire hunter like Hugo into believing he could end the existence of vampires. The silver stake and its leather case were needed to lay out the culprit's alibi and to put the blame on humans. Once the weapon was confiscated and put inside the storage room, the culprit filled the leather case with holy water and made an ice stake. Once it's done, he carried out the deed. The correct time of the murder was between 12:30 and 1 a.m, when there could be other possible suspects. He has enough strength to push the stake into Hannah's heart, and he knows that the lady would be in her room napping. After the deed, he collected some blood into another container, left the bloody coat and the dusty bottle to create the crime scene, then waited for Goddard to leave the storage room. Once the place was clear, he snapped the chains and locks and poured the vampire blood onto the silver stake to make it look like it was the weapon. But in the process, the culprit accidentally touched the silver stake. The wounds from it would take at least a week to heal, so he had no choice but to cut his fingers off using the swords in Hannah's room to hide the evidence. The swords were made of steel, which didn't harm vampires. Then he went out with his father, creating his alibi and completing his crime. Everyone is tense as the realization of who the culprit is hits them. But Aya doesn't need to say the name because the culprit inadvertently admits his crimes. Raoul jumps on Sugaru and tries to claw at his throat. The Oni Slayer simply kicks him out of the window, where the young vampire's family won't see what he's about to do to him. Raoul is against his family becoming human allies. In his mind, their kind is superior. It makes no sense why they have to stoop to the level of weak humans. He thinks that if he creates a vampire murder scene and puts the blame on humans, then the latter will think twice about making them their allies, even at the cost of his own mother's life. But all this doesn't matter to Tsugaru. For him, it's more entertaining to think about how to end this misguided and arrogant young vampire. He doesn't prolong the fight. In one move, Tsugaru terminates Raoul. After this ordeal, Godard is still trying to process the fact that his son did what he did. But the bottom line is that he'll uphold his wife's ideals, that is to maintain a good relationship with humans. One can only hope the family can be given time to grieve for their loss. Before leaving, Aya asks the vampire if he knows a skinny old man who uses a black cane that has the letter M engraved on it. Godard says there was someone like that who visited him not so long ago. He was called the Professor and invited Godard to join him in London, to which the latter refused. Slowly but surely, Aya Rindo gathers more clues about the man who took her body and the one who turned Tsugaru into an Oni, but they need to continue their journey. As it happens, this same man is travelling the country roads along with some peculiar companions. Is he expecting Aya and Tsugaru to come after him? His true intentions for now remain a mystery. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next video. See you in the